Palworld has hit 8 million units sold in just under 6 days, and Nintendo and the Pokemon Company have unfortunately found out about it, and they are not happy. In fact, they're even threatening legal action against Pocket Pair. Could this be the beginning of the end for Palworld? Or is Nintendo and the Pokemon Company's bark worse than their bite? Last night, or earlier today in Japan, the Pokemon Company released a statement, inquiries regarding other companies' games. They don't specifically say Palworld in this statement, but it's fairly clear that they are in fact talking about the game. Here is what they had to say. We've received many inquiries regarding another company's game released in January 2024. Wonder what game that could be. We have not granted any permission for the use of Pokemon intellectual property or assets in that game. We intend to investigate and take appropriate measures to address any acts that infringe on intellectual property rights related to Pokemon. We will continue to cherish and nurture each and every Pokemon and its world and work to bring the world together through the Pokemon in the future. This is such a goofy statement, right? They're like, oh my god, we're just gonna love all the Pokemon, each and every one of them. We're gonna cherish and nurture every Pokemon. And by the way, we're gonna drone strike Pocket Pair for even thinking they can infringe on our intellectual property. Jesus, dude. This has been a complicated issue from the start. Now, originally, there was a lot of false claims that this game used AI. That's how people were thinking they were able to come up with this many monster assets on such a low budget, and why they look vaguely similar to Pokemon. However, that is not true. Currently, there is no evidence to suggest that is the case. Also, the launch trailer dates all the way back to 2021. Stable Diffusion came out in August 2022. So many of these monster designs predate generative AI, or at least its public release. All of which is to say that unless they had like a time machine or something, there is no way that they were able to use AI to generate these designs. However, that wasn't enough proof for some people, and they were like, it still feels a little bit too much like Pokemon, and they continued to investigate into what was going on. As a result, this led to a lot of threads about the wireframes of the models, and that a lot of people suspected that the wireframes of the models were actually the ones from the actual Pokemon games that had been repurposed and changed to be, well, pals. There have been a lot of arguments for and against this, such as this tweet here claiming that the wireframes don't line up, and as a result, this would mean that wireframes aren't just altered Pokemon, so to speak. However, the fact that Nintendo even gave that statement that they were going to be looking into whether it infringed Pokemon or not tells us at least two things. First one being fairly obvious. They are pissed. They are very angry that this even exists in the first place. And I bet you they're even more angry that people are calling it Pokemon with guns. Again, that doesn't give them any legal ground to be able to do anything in a court of law. I would imagine. I don't know Japanese law, and you have to remember, Pocket Pair is really unfortunate in the fact that they are also centered in Japan with Nintendo, where Nintendo's lawyers are strongest. You know, Japan is a country that doesn't even have fair use laws like we have here in the US, where I'm able to use gameplay footage and make a review, for example. That falls under fair use laws. In Japan, those technically don't exist, so if a company wanted to say, like, remove your review of a game because you're using their gameplay footage, they can pretty much always do that. So again, the laws there are quite different. Because this is all in Japan, it's gonna be very tedious for Pocket Pair to be able to navigate this. Again, I have really enjoyed Palworld, and I'm hoping for the best. I hope this isn't a case of infringement. I hope that the assets are things that truly belong to them. However, there's a lot of people making cases here about the meshes, and these cases are probably reaching Nintendo, and Nintendo probably saw these tweets, and now they're definitely actively investigating on whether or not this is a case of art theft. I mean, there are a lot of these tweets comparing the geometry, going back and forth, people debating either way. A lot of people say that it's totally not art theft and that these are just coincidentally the same mesh, same shape, and a lot of people arguing the opposite. Again, I would hope for the best. I would love to see Palworld succeed and thrive and be its own thing, and this not be the case. However, if this is the case, then Nintendo's ability to shut Pocket Pair and Palworld down might be inevitable. Again, especially since they're both in Japan. Now, there was a modder who modded actual Pokemon into Palworld, making it literally Pokemon with guns. And all my guy had to say was, Nintendo has come for me. Please leave me in your thoughts and prayers. swears. The mod was immediately copyright stricken, and I'm sure they sent him a very nasty, very threatening cease and desist. You know, Pokemon has this perception of being family friendly, appropriate for all ages, and so the last thing they would want to do is introduce guns into Pokemon. In fact, I'm willing to bet the guns aspect of this whole thing is what really upsets Nintendo and is making them willing to actively pursue this as much as they are. Maybe even more than the potential of asset theft. I think they just want to use that as a sort of leverage in order to be able to shut it down, because they just don't like the idea of people popularizing Pokemon with guns. Because now you search Pokemon, all these videos titled Pokemon with guns are probably going to come up. The Pokemon Company and Nintendo probably see it as it impacting their brand. And I know I said Nintendo a couple of times when I mean both Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. So don't try to be in the comments like, actually. Now, ironically, just a few days ago, Palworld CEO said they weren't worried about a Nintendo lawsuit, with him saying, "We make our games very seriously. We have absolutely no intention of infringing upon intellectual property of other companies." In the meantime, Palworld will be releasing a number of updates, sharing their roadmap for the future, with some of the issues being addressed, like currently numerous bugs have been identified and we're prioritizing fixing those. Sometimes the world date may experience rollbacks. The loading screen may persist when trying to load into worlds, and so on. And then they have improvements to implement as soon as possible, key configuration improvements, improvements to base PAL AI, and pathing. As far as planned future updates, we have PvP, raid bosses, PAL Arena for PvP for PALs, Steam to Xbox crossplay, various Xbox feature improvements, server transfers and migrations, improvements to the building system, new islands, PALs, bosses, and technologies. Again, it all sounds really exciting, and it's stuff that I want to see come to fruition. So here's the hoping that Pocket Pair has done their research on their copyright law and why it's probably legal. It's worth noting that Palworld itself is likely legal, and there's probably nothing that Nintendo can do about it. The only thing that this absolutely hinges on is the origin of the art assets. If those were in any way derived from the Pokemon games, then it's pretty much over for Pocket Pair. However, if that's not the case, Pocket Pair is in the right and there's nothing Nintendo can do about it. Right now, it is really hard to say conclusively one way or another what this is in terms of the assets, because I've seen a ton of people working in this industry say, oh my god, it's so clearly art theft, and I've seen other people saying that it's not. But I can tell you one thing, that if Nintendo and Pokemon Company can find anything that will even remotely come close to holding up in court, they absolutely will find it and use it. Whether or not Nintendo will actually be able to get Palworld removed, whether they'll be able to take legal action, it's incredibly hard to say, because all this falls under the jurisdiction of Japan's copyright law. As a result, who knows how that's going to work out? What we can say is that Nintendo is a lot richer, and they will spare no expense to have this shut down. And with that much money, kind of doesn't even matter whether you violated the law or not. But please, let me know in the comments, do you think that Palworld is in the right? Or do you think this is artistic theft from Nintendo and the Pokemon Company? This is a comment section that I really look forward to reading. And I'll see you all in the next video.